most people don't get rich overnight. Most people are not expecting that one little investment to like turn them into the next, billionaire. So I think we need to think about that like our health, because we have gotten into this immediate gratification society where, you take a pill and it makes a change in your physiology. Well, and then there's all kinds of side effects that come along with that. But if you're thinking about how your body is healing, it's slow and over time. And always when you make a good choice for your health, it's an investment that will grow over time.
We believe that you are strong by design, and you were made in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. You're listening to the #1 Strength and Health Authority podcast in the world. So let's get ready to unlock your potential and transform your life in today's episode.
Hello, and welcome back to the Strong by Design podcast. I'm your host for today's show, Coach Tanya, and with me I have a very special guest, Dr. Heather Stone. Welcome to the show, Dr. Heather.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you are too. It's been a minute because I think we connected a little, like it was back into late 2024. So I'm glad we finally got our calendars synced that we could have you on the show. Now, what I'm really excited about, I know we've got both male and female listeners, and while the information is valid for everyone, I'm really excited about some of the topics I want to discuss with Dr. Stone today, because we're going to be talking about a few things that I think are very common if you're around a group of women and they're talking about what's bothering them, but maybe not so common in terms of when we actually start looking for real answers and real help. I think a lot of us get caught in some loop that just never seems to actually connect us with something that's really going to make a difference. So before I jump in and start picking Dr. Stone's brain, a little bit about her. She's got an incredible resume here. But she's one of the top functional medicine practitioners in the world with over 20 years of clinical experience in private practice. She has successfully helped thousands of women overcome the symptoms of hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Her thyroid transformation blueprint has been used by hundreds of doctors, and because of that, it's helped countless women return to happy, healthy, and being lean. Her mission is to change the face of healthcare through her private practice, her books, her masterclasses, webinars, education programs, and retreats in Texas. So you have a lot going on.
Yes, I do.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. What got you into starting up a private practice? What was that passion and why? What's the big why?
Yeah, and I think like with many practitioners, most of us have our own our personal story. And for me, I was really struggling with weight. I was struggling with energy. I was struggling with hormonal issues and menstrual cycle irregularities. And, I went to a doctor, and supposedly the top doctor in Austin, and I go in. And this was when I was an undergrad, and it was really pre-Google, pre-Dr. Google. So the only thing I knew was from my textbooks that I was reading and trying to search about what in the world was going on. So I go in and I say, hey, could you check my thyroid? I've got all of these symptoms. I can't, all the things that I just said. And he's like, yeah, sure, I'll check your thyroid. So that's about as far as it actually went. So he checks my thyroid. I come back in a couple of weeks and he says, well, your thyroid's good. Everything is fine. And I think you don't have a menstrual cycle because you exercise too much. And I was like, what in the world? So I knew enough to know what he was talking about. Like when you have professional athletes and their body fat gets down below 10%, you'll stop menstruating. But I'm like 50 pounds overweight. So that is absolutely not what is happening with me. But I am also grateful in that time because I knew that that wasn't the answer. So I, and as he was walking out of the room, he said, oh, by the way, you're probably going to need fertility treatment. So whenever you're ready to have babies, just come back and we'll, fix you up with some fertility treatment. And I was like, is he serious? Like that was just crazy to me. And so I'm grateful for that experience in one hand, but this is what most women are experiencing as they go to the doctor. It's like you have all of these symptoms and there's really no solution, or you just have to live with it or learn to deal with it. Of course, it's what happens, in this phase of life, whatever phase of life you're in. But for me, I'm like, this is not going to be my life. I have to figure out how to resolve this issue because I have so much to do. I cannot be stuck, not feeling well and overweight. How am I supposed to help people do that with that? So once I figured it out, I was like, oh my gosh, there are millions of women who are dealing with this issue that have no solution and they are giving up. Because when you are told that the reason that you're having symptoms is because you're in menopause, or it's because it's your age, or it's because you've got some condition, just learn to live with it, that really doesn't allow us to have hope. We kind of just give up and we give in and start to accept this is what life is supposed to be like, and it isn't supposed to be like that.
Yeah, I'm so glad for all of that, because I think for any of our female listeners, I think what they will resonate with, they'll resonate with a lot of it, whether they've had an experience similar or not. But I think the big thing there for me anyways was that the being told that really there's really nothing wrong with you. And it's like, well, wait a second, I've lived inside this body my whole life. And I talk a lot about this I've talked a lot about it with clients when I had my own practice. I talk a lot about it with girlfriends, talked a lot about it on these podcasts, that our body is the single most advanced biofeedback system in the world. Like and if you're in tune to it, if you learn to pay attention, and some of us are better than others, and depending on your life, maybe you're a professional athlete or just somebody that's really interested in wellness. If you pay even moderate attention to your body and what it's telling you, it is telling you everything that it is lacking, that it's needing, where things are good, where things are not good. So when you finally, and I think women, a lot of times we put ourselves so far down the list, we will make sure that everybody else, not just in our families, in our communities, on our block, in our businesses, we make sure everybody is taking care of themselves. And if they're not, we're the first one to get after them about it. But we put ourselves so far down the list that when we finally go, okay, I'm going to go in and see somebody, because we don't want to be a pain in the butt. We don't want to waste anybody's time or get that, oh, you're just hypochondriac, or that pat on the head thing. When we finally do, because we know something isn't right, we're not saying I'm terribly fatally ill, but something isn't right. I don't feel right. This isn't good. I need some help. When you get that kind of response, it's so incredibly deflating, because I think, part and parcel of that is like shame on those in practices that do that without actually just sitting there for a moment and actually listening to the story of what has been going on and what brought a woman to the point where she's actually coming in and going, I need some help. Because when you send a woman away after telling her, well, everything looks good, well, sure, if you're in a certain range, everything looks okay. But, when you send her back home, the chances of that woman coming back a lot of times looking for more help or seeking other help starts to diminish, because we start to feel like we're just something wrong. There's something wrong here. We're crazy. We're hypochondriac. We're just a nuisance. So I'm so glad that you addressed that, because I think that's a big, big thing that has to be made better. Like we have to work on.
Yeah, and I think you really hit the nail on the head. And one of the things I always say is that you were born to heal. And our bodies are so fascinating and they are so amazing. I get goosebumps, on a daily basis when I see someone who is really able to completely turn their health around when they were in really significant health issues and chronic degenerative diseases in the first place. But I think we don't really support or teach in our society that the body is born to heal and that you can overcome and reverse disease processes. I don't think that we are taught that when we have a symptom, it is just the way our bodies are communicating with us to tell us that something is not quite right. Now, what we are programmed to do is wait and push through that symptom until we absolutely can't function anymore. And then maybe it's a disease, and then we go to the doctor and they give us a drug. But if we would pay attention to our bodies and understand that a symptom is just your body saying, hey, I need a little help overcoming this imbalance. And no, it's not a disease, but there's an imbalance here that I need some help with. And then we would actually prevent so many diseases in the future. But instead, like you say, we have these symptoms and we go to the doctor and they're like, everything's normal. What they mean by everything's normal is you don't have a disease that I can medicate for the most part. And so we're not really reinforcing that your body is able to heal and you should listen to it. And there's underlying imbalances and what can you do to bring the body back into balance? But it's so important that we reconnect with, because we used to know. We used to know that the body was born to heal, but it's kind of been programmed out of us. So we have to reconnect with that. There is hope. The body can heal. There's always, can be a limitation to matter, but that is so far down the road that even
Right.
when I have women that are 80, 70, 60, they can heal their bodies at really any age.
Mm. No, absolutely. I completely agree. And I really like the idea of like education, like educating the Gen Pop again about, what is health and wellness. And it's not just, based on a certain size or how you look
Yep.
on social media. It's like, how do you feel? Like, how do you feel when you wake up in the morning? How do you feel? And I mean, we all have days we wake up and it's like, it's not our best day. Maybe, we're tired. I mean, that happens. That's just life. But overall, day to day, how are you feeling? Like, how are your energy levels? Are you draggy? And we're so fast. Like, the world is so fast. Everything's so fast paced that I think part of the issue might be, we're just taking the time to pause. Like, I think if you're not feeling your best, it's like, yeah, okay, I'm not feeling great. I've been tired for a couple weeks, or I just don't have the same pep that I used to. But we just
Mhm.
keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing
Yeah.
until the point where that thing that probably had it been addressed in some, whether it was, vitamin, mineral deficiencies, maybe just extra water, maybe some more, I don't know, getting some more physical exercise, just something, had that been incorporated months or maybe even a year or so back, today would look very, very different and it would feel very, very different. But we're in such a rush. We're in such a rush just to get to Friday, it feels like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
So it's interesting because, I look at everybody's adrenal glands and adrenal function and their body's ability to handle stress. And a lot of times they're completely depleted and they're like, Dr. Heather, how did I get here? And I'm like, well, on those days where you were tired or that you weren't feeling well and that you pushed through, you were actually borrowing from this savings account. All right. So you were borrowing and you never really deposited back in. And so even when we go on vacation, if we have young kids, we are not relaxing and getting into parasympathetic. And you
No,
are making sure here's the mom. You're making sure everybody's good. Is everybody eating? Do they have the right food? Is who's going where? What are we doing? What activity? That is not depositing back into your savings account of your ability to handle stress. And so I think that we are living in a state of stress. And so that we're always in a state of sympathetic overdrive where your body's always in fight or flight. And we don't ever pull the body back into parasympathetic, which is when you can rest, digest, and heal. So many of us have symptoms of constipation, right? Digestion stops. If you need to run away from a tiger, it is not safe to sit down and go to the bathroom because you are going to be eaten. So digestion stops, it slows down. You can't sleep at night, right? Because it's not safe to sleep and really get out of that space because a tiger is chasing you. Your body can't heal. We can't clear the plaquing out of our brains because this is really what happens whenever we sleep at night. And so we're always in this state of constant sympathetic overdrive, and it's really impossible for the body to start to heal. And then you continue to withdraw from your savings account. And then all of a sudden you get diagnosed with a chronic degenerative disease and you ask, well, how did I get here? And it's because your savings account is depleted. And so we have to really learn how to work things into our lives where we get back into parasympathetic, or like what you were saying, we learn to listen to the body. And instead of pushing forward, it's okay to say, hey, I need a little bit of a break today. I am not going to do anything, even though the garden needs to be tending and, I could go shopping and I need to do all these things on my to-do list, or the house needs to be deep cleaned. You can just say, you know what? I am going to deposit back into my health savings account so that my body doesn't get into a disease state or get into illness.
Love that. And what I want to talk a little bit about, I want to carry that conversation. I got all these topics, but I'm like, okay, I want to go here now. So we're going to be squirreling a bit, but I want to talk a little bit about that word stress, because I think there's definitely sometimes it can be overused a bit, like I'm stressed out. Well, we all have stress, which is,
Yep.
granted, stress isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like you mentioned, stress is a very good thing to have when that tiger's chasing you, right?
Yep.
Because the appropriate response is to run, to get away. So stress is very much necessary. It's very needed. It's a good thing. Same thing when we go to the gym and work out. We're stressing the muscles. We're tearing muscle fibers so they build back bigger and stronger and more of them. So stress, yes, in the right amounts at the right times as an appropriate response to a stimulus or an environment, perfect. But it's when stress becomes that like chronic, like when you're living in a state of stress day to day to day. So talk more about that, how it's taking from the savings. And I mean, I think when I've found it sometimes challenging a discussion to have with somebody who is in a very type A personality, very OCD, very ADD, and they're just go, 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 go. So they're living, they're like their whole life. It is stress based. That is the platform from which they operate daily. So having the conversation about, okay, I understand the necessity of some of that to do what you do and to have the success you're having. I get that. But still, sometimes with having a conversation, someone's like, well, I can't get rid of stress. I'm running this company. I'm on the PTA. I've got 3 kids that are in competitive blah, blah, blah. It's like, I can't avoid or get away from stress. No, but there are ways, like you said, to kind of switch back from that parasympathetic, and something as simple as breathing can get you there in even 5 simple cycles of like box breathing. So can
Yep.
we talk a little bit about that for our listeners?
Absolutely. So I do think it's important. So when I talk about stress, the first thing everybody talks about or thinks about is all the things on your to-do list. The running the companies, the kids, all the things. But what you don't realize is that there's probably stress going on internally that's adding to your external stress, like underlying infections and toxins and the foods that you're eating and the sugar and all of that stuff adds stress to the body. So I always talk about, and I think about myself. You read a long list of things that I do, and I've got 2 kids too, and they play competitive baseball, and and I'm married, and I've got several companies that I'm running, and so it's always like, okay, how am I going to do this life to the best of my ability, give everything I can without coming up or ending in a place of disease? Because that's where a lot of people end. So when I think about it, I am like, okay, how can I maximize my internal health and minimize the stress that my body's dealing with, right? So diet, am I eating the right thing? Am I exercising in the right way and not overdoing it? Am I paying attention to the toxins in my environment, like by the products that I use and making sure there's no mold in my house and making sure the air is clean? So there's so many things you can do to minimize internal stress. Now, the other thing is that sometimes you have to come to the realization that you can't do it all, right? So you got to do what matters the most to you. And so for me, I have to stay healthy for the example that I give to my patients and my family. But am I at every PTA meeting? Nope, because I don't need to be at every PTA meeting, because my priorities is my family, my health, and my business, because I'm helping millions of people. So it's about creating priorities about what is the most important thing in your life, and your health has to be at the top. So some things fall off, and that's okay, because you can't be everything to everyone. And I have learned that in so many different examples, and you don't have to be at every single volunteer thing at school and every single thing that you could possibly be in and participate in. And just really think about, if my health is my number one priority, followed by my family and my business, then where does the PTA meeting fall into that? Okay, so that's what I would say. What's the most important thing? You're going to miss out on some things. I have not been at every single baseball game, but I've been at the majority of them. And so, you just have to make sure that your priorities are right, and then your decisions will fall in line. Now, there are ways that you can move from sympathetic to parasympathetic. And if you will work these into your life, you can tolerate more stress, right? So, getting out in nature and doing a walk in nature. Now, not walking really fast and getting your heart rate up. I mean, like,
That's right, because that can be stressful. I got to get this walk done.
it's like strolling. Just go get lost and look at the flowers and look at the foliage and look at the different colors of the leaves and just get lost there. Or gardening for me is some parts of gardening is very stress relieving. Not the digging of the beds and planting and all the type A stuff that has to go into it, but harvesting and just kind of picking little weeds here and there. That is moving you into parasympathetic. Being with animals is very parasympathetic. You were talking
Yes.
about box breathing, and that is so important because when we are in sympathetic overdrive, our breathing becomes shallow and quick. But if you will move into box breathing, and for those that don't know, like box breathing is breathing in 4 to 5 to 6 counts, breathing in, holding it for however the 4, 5, or 6 seconds, and then breathing out for that same time, holding it out, and then breathing in. And you'll be surprised when you're in a sympathetic overdrive, it's very hard to hold it out. In the lack and in the, oh my God, I don't know what's coming next. Like, even though it's only 4, 5, or 6 seconds, you'll notice that I make myself stay there until the holding of the air out is comfortable. And so, I mean, I might be there for 10, 15 minutes, but it just says to me that, whoa, I was really in a sympathetic state and now I'm back into where I need to be to operate. And also meditation is huge. I mean, meditation, it was really crazy. I went to a meditation retreat and the meditation retreat was 7 days and I was wearing a continuous glucose monitor. So I wanted to see what happened to my blood sugar while I was meditating. And I was not paying too careful attention to what I was eating because I was in Mexico and the food wasn't exactly what I would normally have eaten. And I was eating a little more sugar, a little bit more fruit than I would typically eat. But the most amazing thing is that my blood sugar was almost a flat line. Like, it would go up a tiny bit. But normally, if I would eat like I was eating there over here, my blood sugar, you would have seen it spike after I ate fruit or sugar or anything like that. But because I was in such a parasympathetic state and I was depositing back into my savings account, my body could tolerate and manage blood sugar in a much better way than if I'm in a than if I'm in a sympathetic state and always in this stressful mode. So anyway, I just found that to be extremely telling about how our bodies work when we're in a state of stress or when we're in a state of parasympathetic, where we can be relaxed and our body can actually heal and function in an optimal way.
Right. And I mean not everything is always that simple, but again, going back to, daily practices, intention. If we're able to recognize, okay, I'm, and we know when we're feeling overwhelmed. We know when we're feeling like we've got that bus parked on the shoulder. Like, we just, most of us know when we're feeling a little stressed or when the stress level is trying to creep up. And that is something that's so easy to implement that has such a massive impact. Like, box breathing and meditation, those are things that cost nothing. They can be done almost anywhere. And I wouldn't recommend meditating when you're driving, but I mean, a lot of these practices can be implemented whether you're home, whether you're at work, out walking, because, for some people, meditation, they think, oh, I can't sit there. I can't sit and be still in a room. You don't have to. Walking out in nature can be very meditative. You can be walking and repeating affirmations or just walking and doing the breathing. So these are really, really simple things. And I want to really impress upon our audience just how, like I said it before, how impactful, how much of a difference they will make, not just in the moment, but when they become part of your lifestyle, day to day to day. That accumulation of that choice and those practices is pretty profound overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And just remember, I always look at health on a continuum. And then I also look at, where is your health savings account? Are you doing the things that are depositing back in? Because it does make a difference over time. You don't have to do it all in one shot because your life doesn't work like that, but it's over time. How have you been depositing in there. And it is like little things. It's, the box breathing. It's the walking in nature. It's the, I'm going to make a better choice today with my eating. I am, going to change a product so it's not so toxic, maybe something that's more natural. So all of those little choices are adding into your health savings account.
Right. And I like that you use the term health savings account because it's like any investment. If you buy stocks or if you invest in anything, you
Yep.
want to see that ROI date. You want to see it continually getting stronger and more robust and healthier. Well, it's the same with your health.
It is.
The
And
same with your health.
most people don't get rich overnight. Most people are not expecting that one little investment to like turn them into the next, billionaire. So I think we need to think about that like our health, because we have gotten into this immediate gratification society where, you take a pill and it makes a change in your physiology. Well, and then there's all kinds of side effects that come along with that. But if you're thinking about how your body is healing, it's slow and over time. And always when you make a good choice for your health, it's an investment that will grow over time. I was talking to a patient just the other day, and I was teaching her how to analyze her blood sugar when she was looking at a continuous glucose monitor. And, the first thing we have to do is determine what it is, right? Like, how is it behaving? What are the baselines? Is there an issue? What are the kind of guidelines that we're looking at? And so she's like, okay, I have a lot of blood sugar variability, which means your blood sugar goes up and down all day long, which can be worse than even having just high, stable blood sugar. And she goes, okay, what do we do to fix it? And I'm like, okay, well, you've already been changing your diet. She goes, yeah, now what? And I'm like, okay, you've been doing that for 2 days. So let's keep going and let the body heal and let it like actually repair.
Adjust.
Yeah. Just hang tight and pay attention to how you're feeling. And, you should give yourself some praise for sticking with it and keep moving. And then we'll check on it next week. And then we'll check on it the next week. And then we'll kind of implement from there. But giving your body some grace to actually be in a space to heal. And it takes time, and just like an investment.
Yeah, and I like that because I think it's not just women, but I know like if you're a mother and you're running businesses and you're raising kids, you kind of want that quick, like, okay, I've been drinking more water now for 3 days. Okay, great. Let's do
Awesome.
another 3. And I've used this analogy. It's sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But when you think about it, if you've had children, it takes 9 months to grow a human being. Okay.
Yep.
So you have the baby. Now, if you go back to, if you get into like good, healthy lifestyle, and mostly if you're nursing and stuff, most women were doing eating the right foods, getting the exercise,
Yep.
getting the sleep, because we want to make the best food for our baby. So a lot of us are doing really good things. Now, yeah, you kind of want that as close to pre-baby body that you had. Most of us know it doesn't quite snap back just like that. But with time, being intentional, making the right choices, you are going to get back to like a healthy weight, a healthy body, being able to build muscle, having your energy back, like feeling really well, from the inside out. You can't grow a human being in 9 months and snap back in a week. So it's like anything. And I usually ask the person I'm having a consultation with, like, so how, like, just give me the Cliff Note version of what a day in your life looks like. Like, you get up at what time? What do you have for breakfast? Or you're grabbing coffee and running out the door and drinking it on the way and maybe going through dropping kids off. Like, just give me that. Okay. How many days, weeks, months, years have you been running like that? Like, how long has that looked like your life? And when you hit them with that, they'll be like, there's that aha moment. It's like, wow, I've been doing this for a long time. And again, the savings account is depleted. Now it's caught up with them. And it's like, okay, so we have to start building that back up. And it is going to take some time. But the interesting thing that I find is when you start building up again and those systems become stronger and healthier and the body gets back to like, this is what I know to do. This is how I know to do it. And now that you're giving me all the right things, I have all the tools to do that.
Yep.
Once it gets a little more robust and armed with the right stuff, things start to see more changes. It's the initial getting there, like getting to that foundation of wellness again.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because a lot of the way that our society is set up, is quick fixes, right? So lose 30 pounds in 30 days. Or, there's these kind of crazy expectations of what the body should be doing. And so they'll jump on these fad diets or these bandwagons where we're like, the expectation is lose 30 pounds in 30 days. If they only lose 10 pounds in 30 days, they're really disappointed. And they're like, nothing works for me. And you go back to the old same eating habits. And then you get stuck in this pattern of nothing I ever do works. And so it's really important for you and the listeners to understand that when you're embarking on health is a journey. And it doesn't ever stop until you take your last breath. So this is a thing that has to be a priority if we want to have good health for the rest of our lives. And so when we force the body to do something, like losing 30 pounds in 30 days if you did that, it's probably not in a healthy way, right? I mean, maybe it's not even weight, it's water and maybe some inflammation. And maybe somebody who lost 30 pounds in 30 days needed to lose 200 pounds, right? So it's easier when the more you have to lose and the more inflammation that you have. But when we're trying to lose 10, 15, 20 pounds and we expect it to come off in 30 days, then we get really frustrated. And then we go back to all of our old eating habits. And then we continue to take from our health savings account. And so realizing and understanding that the body takes time, but the body is born to heal, but you have to make sure that it's in an environment where it can heal. Like, for example, maybe the toxic load on the body is making it very difficult for the body to heal. Maybe you have mold toxins and some heavy metals, and you're eating foods that have a lot of pesticides and dyes in it and things like that. And then you are expecting your body to make some miraculous change when you decrease your calories. So I'm like, okay, maybe it's going to initially, but it's going to be slow. And you actually have to figure out the root cause of why you have a symptom. There's always a root cause. There's always an underlying issue to why your body is expressing a symptom. And we kind of got on the topic of weight. And weight is just another symptom that your body is not functioning like it should. And so instead of thinking that the weight is what's causing all of your symptoms, if you would look at the weight as a symptom and say, okay, where is this coming from? And what do I need to do to start to bring my body back to normal? You've got to really address the root cause and give your body time to heal and move back into balance, or what we would call homeostasis.
Absolutely. Well said. And if you're listening to the show, you need to rewind and hear that again and again and again, because there isn't really a magic formula. The formula is in our DNA. I mean, the formula is we're born, the body's wired to do this. It's wired to grow. It's wired to heal itself. It's also wired to go through the physiological, biological changes that happen as we go through life. I mean, the things that our body needed in our 20s, when we were being primed, have children and go through pregnancies and childbirth and just all that's like, and further back, like to our teens, like the things what we need in our teens, it's not the same stuff we need in our 40s and our 50s. We need, not terribly different, but we do need different in different amounts. So that's another thing, it's sometimes accepting getting older or aging can be difficult for some people, but trying to do, I can remember having a conversation with a girlfriend last year, and we're both very like to go to the gym and like to be active, and we were both kind of having a conversation afterwards about how, damn, this is a lot different than when we were in our 20s. Like, our lifting completely has changed. Like, it's not so much about getting strong for competition anymore. It's more about functional movements and keeping flexibility and, just completely different. And saying how, wow, it's kind of, the results don't come the same. They don't come as, it's a different ball game. And I reminded her, I said, well, yeah, but we're also in our 50s. We don't really want to be lifting like we're in our 20s. I don't know that that's the best thing. And really, what's that going to do for us? Like, what's that going to do for us? What we need is just to continue to maintain like that homeostasis and wellness. And, the needs of the body change. And I think when people are willing to embrace that, like really seriously and authentically embrace, this is where I'm at in my life. This is actually what my body needs. When you start, when you become friends with your body again, when you start listening to it and obeying what it's saying, I need this, it actually, it's a really wonderful relationship.
Yeah, it's interesting because, as the body ages, we're not necessarily supposed to experience symptoms and dysfunction. However, the needs of the body do change. And like what you were saying, when we are younger, it's really, if you just look at, Mother Nature, it's to build a body that can have babies, right? Like it's really in that fertility, what's going to maximize fertility. And then as you move out of that, then it's like, how do we preserve brain function? How does the body preserve muscle mass as much as it can? Because what happens is there is a disease of aging, and I think it's the only disease that we have of aging, which is sarcopenia, which is our muscle mass starts to break down. So
Yeah.
you're right. It's early on when we lift weights, we build muscle pretty easily. We can get toned pretty easily because the body's in a state of muscle building. But now, as we reach that kind of center point, the muscles are breaking down. So our lifting weights is just maintaining our muscles for what we built in the beginning. And so, and also the body fat does change because you need to have brain function. And there's actually a study that came out, I think pretty recently, that said after the age of 65, you do not want to have a lot of weight loss and big changes in your body fat because that has been associated with an increased risk of cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's. And so, I think ultimately you just want to make healthy habits for where you're at. Like, don't eat sugar and eat less processed foods and get some activity, move your body because you've got to move your lymph. And I think that we should still be lifting weights, but maybe not in the same way that we did early on. And yes, we need to maintain flexibility and all these things. So the purpose and the pro-survival thing of the body, it does change as we make our way through life. And maybe it's not so important to have a body where your body fat is like, I don't know, 20%, but maybe 25 to 30% is acceptable and you're not obese and you're not, overweight, but you're still maintaining all the other aspects of life that promote survival and longevity.
And protecting brain function, because that's,
That is the biggest thing. I mean, I don't know about... Yeah, my biggest thing is how do I protect my brain? And so I'm eating good fats, right? Exercising, doing all the things so that you can maintain your brain function. I don't know about you, but I'm going to live to 120 at least. I think there's research coming out saying that we are supposed to be living to 180. I'm like, wow, I think I'm under, my goal is really under it. So I'm like, okay, 120, but I have to have optimal brain function at 120. I don't want to be some person who's living in a body that is not enjoying an experience in life in a great way. So I think it's shifted from more of the vanity stuff to now, how do I move into longevity? And ultimately, you're gonna find the right balance.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I read something a couple weeks ago about like the longevity today versus what it was, even 40 years ago. And I was like thinking, wow, that's incredible. Like if I could have my grandparents here and be talking to them about it, they'd probably be looking at me like I had two heads. And I can almost hear my grandmother being like, that's enough of people. I was ready when I went. I would have enough of people. So it was okay. But it's right. Like when you look at it, you're not going to be going into like 100, 110, looking to look a certain way on the beach, right? It's about being able to like live independently as well as possible, take care of yourself, being able to like do the things like the grocery shopping and do your banking and like make life decisions for yourself, right? Because you don't, none of us, I mean, my father had Alzheimer's. So for the last almost 7 years of his life, he was in full-time care and he didn't get to make those decisions. And knowing my dad prior to that, I mean, that was a heartbreaking thing to see happen because he was always like He was the guy that everybody in the family went to make decisions when they couldn't make a decision. So that is, when you get a front row seat to that, that does have a huge impact on for me anyways, looking forward into going, because I'm going to be a senior. It's going to happen. There's a start here, you go this way. It's a one-way street. So I'm not oblivious to the fact that I'm going to age, get older, become a senior, but it doesn't mean I have to get old.
That's right.
Become old.
So whenever I'm talking to my patients, I always ask them like, what we outline their goals. What is it exactly that they're trying to achieve, so that we're all have the right expectation. And then I ask them like, what is their motivation? Like, why do they want to achieve those goals? Because it's so important. And several of them will say, I want to prevent dying. I'm like, well, wait, we're not preventing dying. You're going to die, but let's prevent dying.
Figure that out.
That's right. I'm like, do you think I'd be sitting here if I figured that out? I said, what we want to prevent is dying before you take your last breath. We want to really look and focus on the quality of our lives as we start to age. And it is interesting, and it is a shift where, some women in their late 60s and 70s, they're like, their number one goal is I want to lose 30 pounds. And I'm like, that's more important to you than fixing your brain function, and that's more important to you than reversing this diabetes? We're like, oh no, but I'm just they're just in the habit of saying that is their only goal. And so as you start to shift the goals and the motivations and the priorities, guess what happens to the weight? It starts to come off because you're fixing the body. And so it's a really big mindset shift. And for them to start loving their bodies again, like you were saying, and understanding and knowing that your body's not your enemy, it's really just trying to help you. It's really a huge shift in people and moving them forward in their health journey.
Yeah, I love that. And it's a little bit disheartening to hear stories like that, because I noticed this the other day. I think all of us have social media. And I was noticing now, I was mentioning to a friend of mine, I'm like, wow, at one point, and maybe it's because of the age I was at, that what I was very aware of was like the women kind of in my age group, and like, wow, they look, even for like 40, they look like they got their 20-year-old body, like, wow, that's amazing. But now there is, and I know AI is probably a part of it, but I'm seeing a lot more images of women that like it's advertised like, in her 60s and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, in her 60s? Has she been kept in like trial? Like, has she been vac sealed from the neck down? Because she looks amazing. She's got a 6-pack. She's got biceps. I'm like, and so that doesn't really help, because as much as any logical woman, man can sit there and go, that's probably less than 2% of the population. It's still, we are so inundated with images of, you can look like this, just buy this. It's like,
It's weird because, a long time ago before social media, we were looking at magazines and they would airbrush all the magazines and nobody actually looked like what they look like on those magazines. But that was the image and the expectation that we had. And now we go to social media and it is really crazy. There was this kind of campaign that women were doing, and they were showing you the pictures that they took, and then they were showing you like what they actually looked like in real life. And it wasn't that they were doctoring their pictures, but the way that you pose and the angle of the camera and the things that you do to kind of get on there is not really like what you look like. And nobody's going to stand like that for very long anyway. And my son, I sent him a picture of something. He was like, Mom, that is AI. AI is getting you every single time. And now we don't even know what's real, what's not real. They're like, look at the mouth. It's not moving with the words. And there's like, it's not even a delay. It's like, that isn't even what that person is saying. So I'm like, we just have to be really careful and think about, in my mind, let's shift to longevity and as healthy as we possibly can get. The body will follow along. And I think it's important for people to understand that maybe the lady in her 60s with a 6-pack isn't as healthy as what we equate that body to look like, right? So skinny doesn't always mean healthy. And super toned and super muscular doesn't always mean healthy. My husband was like, God, I'd like to look at the labs on that person. He was just talking about somebody that was in the fitness world because that isn't normal. Like that is not what the person that we were looking at. And so I just want everybody to realize if we could just shift our mindset to health instead of, all about body image, your body is going to be the shape and the way that it needs to be for your phase of life. Without it doesn't need to be obese or overweight. It just needs to be normal and optimal function.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think this healthful longevity. I think, that
Yep.
is something that needs, I think it needs to be a bumper sticker. It needs to be a t-shirt. It needs to be, it needs its own hashtag. Like it really needs to be something that becomes more heavily promoted. Like I remember back from, I competed in bodybuilding for about 9 years. And while I loved it, that was, even though at stage day, it was like, wow. I mean, everything was like popping. It looked good, but that was not healthy. I mean, when you're standing up there, you're walking around at between 9 and 11% body fat, and you can't answer simple questions. That is not healthy. So I never went into it for the long term. But
Yeah.
looking back, like looking at when I pull up pictures then and myself now, like I'm very happy with how I look now. I'm really exuberant about how I feel now and what my lifestyle is. But looking back at that and looking to this, I'm like, wow, you could very easily get lost in that
Yep.
because of just how something looks. And I can remember, because I can read labs, I can remember like keeping up with my labs and being like, ooh, okay, after this competition, I need to take a couple months off because I got to start rebuilding because it's not healthy. I mean, yeah, you look fantastic and you're strong, but no.
Yeah. My
I'm here.
sister actually did that, and I was asked. She did that a few years ago, and I was asking her. I said, "Well, what did you do to get your body like that?" She goes, "Oh, you don't want to know." I said, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah, it's not healthy." So she's like, we won't even go there. So just don't even ask me." So anyway, and she was having infertility at the time, and I'm like, "Why did you do that when you were trying to get pregnant? Like that doesn't make any sense because you know that when you get body fat that low, you're not going to be able to get pregnant." And so she was like, "I don't know. I don't know." She was having, who knows? It wasn't rational, I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wanted to, we kind of, I got an entire list of things to talk about now, but before we wrap up, there is one thing I wanted to talk about that I haven't talked about a lot with other guests, and that is the thyroid. You have your thyroid transformation.
Yep.
So can you speak a little to that? Because that is one thing that seems to just keep coming up, that women go in and get their thyroid checked. And you can't tell me that 90% of women, their labs come back and the thyroid's okay. I understand it falls within a range that says it's okay. But I know when I go, like I've got a great lady now. She's completely like, she gets it. She knows my history. She knows about the bodybuilding, all of that stuff. So when my labs come back and they say in range, we dig deeper, because if I say to Heidi, I am not feeling well, this isn't how I'm supposed to feel, we dig deeper to find the problem. But a lot of women will just, you go in, you get your labs, doctor says everything's fine, go home, take a nap. Like, okay.
Yeah.
But that doesn't fit. So talk a little bit about thyroid health, and what for women, when that does happen, when they're told they're in range, everything's fine, but they're not feeling fine, what can they do?
Yeah, so I could literally talk for hours, so I'm going to try to give the cliff notes of the big picture here.
Yeah,
So
we'll have you back to do this again. We'll do a
okay,
show just on thyroidism.
that's fine. That's fine. I feel like we could talk forever, so that's totally good. That's totally good. So with thyroid, there's a few things. First of all, when you go in and you ask to have your thyroid checked, or they check your thyroid, they're usually only checking one marker, which is a TSH. Now, if you're lucky, they may do TSH, they may do a T4, and maybe, a couple of other markers that are included with the thyroid panel. But there's actually 12 different thyroid markers to run to really evaluate how the thyroid is actually functioning. And when they just measure the TSH, that's not even a thyroid hormone. The TSH, it stands for thyroid stimulating hormone, and it comes from the pituitary. So the pituitary is making this hormone to kind of like, knock, knock, thyroid, I need you to make more hormone, right? So there could be a problem with the pituitary that is not uncovered. They're just looking at it in a vacuum to say, do you have high or low thyroid? And if that TSH is within this giant range, which is usually like 0.45 to 4.5, then they're going to tell you everything is normal. Like you said, go take a nap or just deal with it. Like this is, you're 50, go deal with it. This is what happens. But there are actually functional ranges or what we would call optimal ranges for where you should be falling. And for example, a TSH should really be between 1 and 2. Some can go up to go up to 3 and they still are fine. So 1 to 3 is really ideal. Now you could be 3.5, 4, 4.5 and still fall in this in this laboratory range, and they're going to tell you that everything is fine. And it's really important, like as you look at the full thyroid panel, like all of those different markers, there's about 20 different patterns of thyroid dysfunction that we can uncover. But mostly they're looking at TSH to say, do you have low thyroid hormone? And we're going to put thyroid hormone in. And that's really the extent of the care of the thyroid. And then the other really big piece of the puzzle is that 90 to 98% of women who have low thyroid actually have an underlying autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's, where the immune system tags the thyroid tissue for destruction. Now, you can have Hashimoto's without having low thyroid. So you can have Hashimoto's and have every single low thyroid symptom. This is where I fell. They looked at my TSH, like everything's normal, nothing's wrong with you. But then as I started to learn and understand more, I'm like, okay, I need to run these antibodies. And sure enough, they were sky high. I'm like, oh, I got Hashimoto's. So essentially, it means that the immune system is attacking and killing the thyroid. And so only to the point where it kills it enough, where it can't produce enough thyroid hormones, do you get diagnosed with low thyroid and they give you thyroid hormones. But there's a long time. There can be a long time in between when you have all these symptoms, when Hashimoto's turned on, and then to when you're diagnosed with actual low thyroid. And I do think it's really important to understand if you have Hashimoto's. In traditional medicine, it doesn't really matter if you have Hashimoto's because the treatment doesn't change, which is why they don't really put any kind of emphasis or they don't make any big deal out of you having Hashimoto's. But it's an autoimmune disease. And when you have one autoimmune disease, you're at risk for developing multiple autoimmune diseases. And with Hashimoto's in particular, at risk for developing thyroid cancer. So it's really important that you address this from a root cause level and really figure out what's happening with the thyroid. And if you have symptoms, remember your body's trying to communicate with you. And so, you may not be classically diagnosed as low thyroid, but your thyroid could be not in an optimal function where you have dysfunction, but not yet a disease.
Right. Okay. That was a great Cliff's Notes. And like I said, we'll have to, I want to get you back on the show so we can talk more just about thyroidism and Hashimoto's, because I don't know if it's just sort of how things lined up, but it seems, or for me anyways, since getting connected with you and then working to get you on the show, it just seems like anytime I turn my phone on or my computer and I subscribe to all kinds of health and wellness letters, I get like clinical trial journals and stuff like that. It seems to be like a very, I think it's always been there, but it seems to be getting a lot of attention. And I'm glad for that because it's something, it's like that, like you said, you can have the symptoms of one without having the other. Yep. And I really, really am passionate in making sure we get this information, have podcasts, and get this stuff out there so that when women go and they're asking for labs or they're sitting with their doctors, they can have a conversation, being more informed and be like, no, I know when to go, thank you, walk away, find somebody else, or at least know what other questions to ask to facilitate deeper digging, because nobody needs to, just because your thyroid isn't functioning optimally does not equate to you living a life of not being well and feeling miserable. That's not how it works.
Yeah. I think the more you educate, the more people get empowered, right? Because information and knowledge allows you to ask questions. It allows you to understand. And I think the days are gone when you go to the doctor and you kind of blindly take what they say or blindly take the medication. We are in an information age where we have access to more information than ever before. Now it is sifting through the information to figure out what's right and not right. But it is
Right.
about being able to determine what you're looking for. What is a doctor offering? Asking more questions, asking for additional testing. It is about us taking a more front row seat to our health and really driving our health and the path that we go down as we move through this aging process.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, you have
Yeah.
to be your own advocate. You have to be your own advocate because the chances that 100% of the time you're going to be paired up with the perfect healthcare provider and let's just, I'm going to, because I don't want any healthcare providers out there to think you know, um, talking down, but they've got their plates are full. They've got all these people to see in this much time. So they're stressed, they're inundated, they're overwhelmed and exhausted. So, it's you have to be your own advocate. You really, really do. You can't just walk in and blindly trust and take what you're told. Not because I think someone's trying to steer you wrong, but when you don't feel right, pursue it, pursue it, pursue it till you find somebody that can
Yeah.
help you work on a program to get you feeling right again.
Yeah, and I think
That's what
one
it
of
takes.
the biggest frustrations that we're experiencing is going to a doctor and expecting something than what they deliver. So, there is a time and place for every healthcare practitioner and every single modality, but if you go to a doctor and they haven't been trained to dig in and find the root cause and look at imbalances, but yet they've been trained to diagnose disease and apply their therapy, but you want something different than what they are offering or been trained in, it's frustrating for both because they're like,
Exactly.
I don't know what you're doing. Why are you asking me for that? I don't do that. And then you're like, why don't you do that? That's when that's, if you are really clear, when you're looking for your doctor to be very clear about what you are seeking and what kind of care you want, then you can kind of go back and forth and make sure that you're with the right healthcare practitioner. And it's always good to have a team. It's always good to
Oh,
have
yes.
several practitioners that you work with so that you can go get what it is that you need at that time.
Absolutely. I love teams. I love that. Thank you for saying that. I love that because I'm the biggest person to be like, you don't just need one person, you probably need a few people. And if those few people can talk together and get along, you've got a winning combination. You really, really do. I'm seeing more of that actually
Mhm.
in the healthcare industry, like doctors and nutritionists and all like working together
Yeah.
to be like, okay, like here's what I'm doing, here's what they're and putting together like basically a lifestyle program that
Yep.
you can follow that's going to help you feel better. And that way, when something starts to maybe not work or something feels a little different, you've got your team. They look at, well, here's what I did. Here's what I did. I mean, teams are the way to go because I think
Yeah.
it's unfair to just expect one doctor to know all of it and be able to go, okay,
Yeah.
that's nobody can, that's not fair for
No,
anybody.
I mean, I spent 20 something years studying and having experience with functional medicine only, right? So to expect somebody to have that much experience and also be trained in a completely different model is really unfair, but you do have to make sure you're with the right team. Like for example, I had a patient just last week. She said I was with a doctor and he said if I was going to see you also that he wouldn't see me. And I said, "Perfect. He's not the right one. You find another doctor." She goes, "I did, and she loves what you're doing and is willing to work with us
Well,
and is fine with everything." And I'm like, "And I'm fine with her." So
yeah.
let's
Oh,
work
that's good.
together as a team. And there are doctors that are out there that and the world is changing. So make sure you find somebody that you resonate with and has your best interest at heart.
Oh, I think that's the perfect way to end the show. Perfect, perfect message. So I want to thank you, Dr. Stone, for being on the show. I am going to have you back because I want to do show. I want to talk just about the thyroid and Hashimoto's autoimmune. I think that's like I said, like you said, I think we could talk for hours. So we'll do a follow-up show where we can talk about all of that. I will not squirrel. I'll keep my ADD. But thank you so much for being on the show. I know you're incredibly busy. And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please give us a thumbs up and a 5-star review. And please share this podcast with somebody that you know is going to benefit from hearing it. There's some great information and things that we talked about today. We will have all of Dr. Stone's information in the show notes. So if you want to reach out to her or you want to find her and learn more about her and her practice, it's all there. Dr. Stone, thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me. I had a great time.
All right, everybody, have a wonderful day. Be well and healthy always.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe so that more people can find out about our show. Plus, you don't want to miss any future episodes with the amazing guests and topics we have lined up for you.